Welcome to Flimdog Science, my science lovers. Today we'll be checking out Aufbau diagrams, learning about energy levels, sublevels, where electrons are in those atoms, and ultimately how we can use that to learn about valence and electron configuration. Flimdog Science with me, Caleb Fleming. Let's start out here. We're going to draw, whenever you do an Aufbau diagram, I like drawing just a real quick. Obviously, you're probably not going to use a ruler when you make a quick sketch. But real quick X and Y axis, and I do energy as my Y axis, and at the very top, that's my high energy, and at the bottom, that's low energy. We'll see that the further away we get from the atom, that's going to be the higher energy. So if you think about low energy, that's going to be like really near the nucleus. And the x-axis, those are going to be our different sublevels. So we'll color code those. Green is going to be our S sublevel today. P is going to be or purple will be our P sublevel, and red will be our D sublevel, and blue will be our F sublevel. So let's look at a little bit more about these sublevels. The S sublevel, it has a spherical shaped orbital. So the electrons kind of make a spherical path when they're in the S sublevel, and that's generally what kind of shape we see. P has these dumbbell-shaped orbitals, and there's 3 P orbitals, which we'll see in just a moment, but they kind of make this little dumbbell. They're either going kind of in the X or the Y or the Z direction coming out towards us. And then the D, that's the cloverleaf. I'm not going to draw those. I'll draw one of them, but there's 5 D orbitals that all have various directions that they're spinning in. One of them is a slightly kind of cool shape, not exactly looking like that cloverleaf. It's kind of like a dumbbell with a hula hoop around it. And then the F, there's 7 different ones there. So we're not going to do too much with the F shapes. So first one, the 1s orbital here. Let's make some notes about what this means. So each of these horizontal lines, that represents an orbital. That represents an orbital. And you may be asking yourself, what's an orbital? We're going to get to that in just a little bit. We're going to look at some guys' rules here that talk about orbitals. The 1 is representing the energy level that we happen to be on. So with the 1s orbital, we're on the first energy level, and that S is telling us about what sublevel that orbital is in. Now we'll diagram out a few of these before we just start writing them out. So again, the 2 is the energy level that we happen to be in. So we're in the second energy level with the 2s, and the S here is the sublevel that we're in. So we're in the second energy level, S sublevel. Now let's go to the P. The P has 3 orbitals, and they're X, Y, and Z, so you can think about them going in the X direction, the Y up and down, and then Z kind of out towards you. So again, the 2 is telling us we're in the second energy level. P is telling us the sublevel that we're in, and then we have these 3 different orbitals that are available to house electrons. So P has these 3 orbitals. After this, we have the 3s, and we'll start going a little quicker now. Then the 3p. After 3p, we jump on up to 4s, and then we go over to 3d. And if you're curious how to do this, we'll have a video coming up soon that talks about how to create your Aufbau diagram just based on looking at your periodic table, because you really want to be able to do that without too much trouble. 4d. And then 3p, and quick note on the D sublevel, that has 5 orbitals there, 6s, and I made a little mistake here. I got a little carried away. I forgot about the Fs, and I'll come back and put those in just a moment, so I apologize for that. Again, the D has 5 orbitals, and then we go 7. So we'll make some notes here about the D sublevel. So the D has 5 orbitals here. Right above the 6s, we're supposed to have the 4f there. I apologize, I didn't get that quite in order. And then after the 7s, we have the 5f. And the F sublevel has 7 orbitals. So you can see that they go 1, 3, 5, 7. So hopefully that helps you remember 1, 3, 5, 7. Nature has some cool patterns. And if we just go in order here, it goes 1s, 2s, 2p, 3s, 3p, 4s, 3d, 4p, and then 5s, 4d, 5p, 6s, all the way over to 4f, 5d, 6p, 7s, all the way over to 5f. So that's the order of filling. And another way we could write that out, if we did that kind of in a little flow diagram here, it goes 1s, after 1s, 2s, and you don't necessarily really want to memorize this. You want to be able to look at your periodic table and be able to do it. And there's some little quick cheating ways to know how orbitals fill, but it's really, I find, best to know by looking at the periodic table and understanding what your periodic table is actually telling you. So here we're to 3D and then 4p. After 4p goes to 5s. 5s goes to 4d. So you see it can be a little tricky if you're just trying to memorize it, because it's not like it just goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have all these jumps and it's like, why is that happening? And that's where we really need to understand the periodic table, because it gets very confusing by the time you get to that 6th energy level, because it goes 6s, then 4f, then 5d. It's like we're counting backwards. And then you jump up to 6p, and then 7s. So if you didn't understand the periodic table, that'd be really tricky. So be on the lookout for that video coming out soon. And 5f, and that is the order of energy level and sublevel filling by those electrons. And if you haven't seen any of the cool little tricks for remembering that, there are some really fun, easy ones. I've definitely used them in my life. I didn't always understand the periodic table super well, so they're good things to know. So here's some keys whenever we're doing Aufbau diagrams. First one, and these are kind of summary of the big ones. All electrons live in orbitals. And the symbol for the electron that we'll see, it's like a little up half arrow or a little down half arrow. Second general key here, orbitals hold 2 electrons max. So they're always going to hold 2 electrons max. And again, when we talk about orbitals, that's those little horizontal lines. That's an orbital. Number 3, electrons in the same orbital have opposite spin. So one is going to be going upwards. We can say that that's clockwise. One's going to be going down. That's counterclockwise. And that helps balance it out. So one will be going up in an orbital. One will be going down. And if we were to generally categorize the main guy who came up with this is the Pauli exclusion principle. Okay, that's generally the Pauli exclusion principle, that orbitals hold 2 electrons max, and in the same orbital they have opposite spin. Okay, let's go to number 4. So key number 4, a sublevel, whether you're in S, P, D, or F here, a sublevel, S, P, D, or F, must fill completely. Right? It's got to fill all the way up before the next sublevel is going to start filling. So it's going to fill completely before the next sublevel begins filling. And that's very, very important. So a sublevel, that would be like the S, that 1 dash, or the P, the 3 dashes, D, those 5 dashes, or F, all 7. They have to fill completely before you go up to the next set of orbitals above, the next sublevel up. And that is the Aufbau principle. Who does that? Ooh, had trouble writing orbital there. So 1 electron per orbital before the second electron. So say you're in the P sublevel. There's 3 orbitals. Each one of those 3 orbitals is going to get an electron before the second electron goes in. So, and then rule number 6, all first electrons get some up spin. So whenever you're putting that first electron in, you need to do an up spin. And that's Hund's rule. So 1 electron per orbital before the second electron, and all those first electrons get the same upward spin. Let's do a little example. We won't do a super complicated one here. We'll do a video with more examples later. But let's say we have oxygen. It's got 8 protons and 8 electrons, and Aufbau diagrams are dealing with those electrons. So where are those electrons? So the first one, the one that's closest to the nucleus here, we got the up arrow. The electron gets the up spin. That's in the 1s orbital. That accounts for one of the electrons. It's yellow, so that's like Hund's rule. So 1 electron per orbital before the second, and it gets that up spin. And then the second one, electron gets the downward spin, so that's like the Pauli exclusion principle. So we got 2 electrons in that orbital with opposite spin. So every time we fill up an orbital, it's Aufbau's principle that tells us we go up to the next energy level. And then now we see we have all 3 of those electrons going upwards. So 1 electron with up spin first, then those second electrons. And that's Hund's rule there. So we filled it up according to the Aufbau principle. Then we went into the P sublevel and gave them all up spin first. And then we gave that last electron in the P sublevel. So now when we're writing the electron configuration here, the electron configuration, when we look at the 1s, there's 2 electrons, and that's that little superscript there. So 1s has 2 electrons. The superscript says how many electrons there are in that particular sublevel. The 2s has 2 electrons, and then that 2p has 4 electrons. So we can convert that Aufbau diagram into an electron configuration fairly easily, and using the Aufbau diagram will also help us with those exceptions that come up with electron configuration so we don't get stumped or accidentally miss those. So that brings up our last concept here is valence. These are the outermost S and P electrons, and these are super, super important. Understanding a little bit about valence electrons with what we're doing. They help determine what kind of bonding you're going to have. They help determine how things are going to react. And so understanding valence is going to be really key. And so these are the outermost S and P, so that's the second energy level is our biggest energy level there, and it's the S and P electrons in that N equals 2 second energy level. So here there are 6 valence electrons in the S and P. So those are our valence guys right there. And I hope that is helpful for you getting started with Aufbau diagrams. We got more coming. Thanks for checking that out, and I'll see you all soon.